Marsha, it's really good to have you here on Unbroken. Um, I know we're going to talk about a very interesting topic that you know a lot about, which is Orgonite and energy in general. And so I would just love it if you would just sort of introduce yourself briefly for people who are watching who don't know who you are.
Sure, sure. My name is Marsha, and I developed an interest in Orgonite basically when COVID hit, and I had some time on my hands, and decided to do something that would benefit people. And I started making them and giving them as gifts to my friends. I'm very interested in the topic of EMF, and that I have a PhD in electrical engineering. And I've also am an energy healer. I've studied different modalities of energy healing for years. And this just kind of is something that brings the two together. I'm real excited about it. The more I learn about it, the more excited I get about it.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I kind of stumbled upon Orgonite and all of this a few years ago. So I had educated myself quite a bit as well. And as I understand it, Wilhelm Reich discovered orgone energy in the 1930s. And what orgone energy is, as far as I understand it, and you can maybe add to this, is basically life force energy, right? And so what's the opposite of that is a kind of immobilized or dead life force energy, which is something that is created, for example, by cell towers, by cell phones, by smart meters. And in fact, if we look around the whole globe, cell towers have created this sort of energetic frequency fence over all of us. And that is the opposite of life force energy. And so I'm sure you're going to talk to us about this, but Orgonite is something that you make and that can be made that can transform that negative anti-life force energy back into life force energy, right?
Right. That's a really good description, Max. Wilhelm Reich used orgone energy specifically and to heal people of lots of different ailments. And of course, he was imprisoned, like healers who make significant changes usually are. And the term orgonite didn't actually come out until 1991 when a man named Wells actually took the basis of Wilhelm's work and made a form that included metals, crystals, and epoxy. And so he's the one who we credit with given the term orgonite. And though anyone can make it. And so if you want to talk a little bit about the specifics of it, it creates this positive orgone energy, and like you say, it's the energy of life force, and it's really the same energy that we call prana or chi.
Yeah.
And that is really connected. It is in harmony with nature.
Yeah.
And so the big problem, one of them, with all these EMFs, electromagnetic fields that are created by cell towers and all your different instruments, is they are disharmonious with natural energies. They're backwards to many in many ways. So I call them dirty orgone.
Yeah.
Um,
And if I understand correctly, Marsha, these EMFs, basically what they do in the atmosphere is they prevent hydrogen from bonding with oxygen. So they prevent rain from being naturally created where it would, hence all this drought and desertification everywhere. And I also, in my understanding and what I've read, it traps actual physical pollution into the atmosphere and doesn't let it dissipate, right? So
that's
yeah.
right, Max. That's really good. And so the benefits of orgonite can be extremely beneficial. They can, in addition to transforming or transmuting the energy in your home, the phone, computers, the Wi-Fi's, and the cell towers, they can actually begin to dissipate the chemtrails. And
Right.
that whole overlay, as you say, from the towers that the EMF creates.
So for people who don't know what Orgonite even is, from my understanding, it's you need a quartz crystal or some crystals and some metal shavings and a copper coil, and then it's in like a polyester resin, and it's compressed, and it's that compression that causes that force field of that energy, right? So I don't know if you have a physical piece of Orgonite you could just show people.
I just happen to have one there.
Yeah, so see what it looks like for someone who's never heard. Wow.
I look at it, and I call my Orgonite organ art because you can see it all over the place, and it's it doesn't need to be pretty if you're going to take it hopefully and bury it in by a cell tower. So there can be very many different ways of doing it, but I like to add artistic forms and geometries that are this particular geometry is for water. Now, for pure Orgonite, you don't need a specific geometry, but I also like the geometry of this pyramid, which is a particular geometry of the Russian pyramids that have been discovered lately. And if you happen to have a pyramid in your home, it makes an excellent capstone. But you're absolutely right. The Orgonite has to have metal shavings, and the smaller ones are better because if you think about it, you have more surface area when you have more individual pieces.
Oh, okay.
And yes, there's always some kind of crystals. Clear quartz is one of the best, and I also include for not only the beauty of any kind of quartz is preferable. So that includes a lot of different stones, and amethyst, for instance, is a quartz, and so are a lot of others. So it adds to the beauty, but then you also have the particular characteristic of the stone that is like, for instance, I like lapis a lot. One thing, it's beautiful, but it also has a really calming, empowering effect. So you can go as far as you like with it. But if you just want like a tower buster, something that you want to bury under the towers, which is a really good thing to do, then you can just get one that's simply made and of course cheaper.
Right.
That's just metal filings and a couple of quartz crystals. Yeah.
And you made that, didn't you?
Yeah, this is what I make.
Wow.
One of the examples. I make very many different kinds, and I call them organ art.
So something that size, for example, would bring back clean life force energy to what size room? Or
It's approximately, I would say that size would be like a 20-foot diameter, and it's something that's very difficult to measure because the scientific instruments would be very costly to do that. But there are ways, just the effects. I mean, I have people that put an piece of Orgonite by their computer, and they say their mood just gets so much better, and they get so much more peaceful and patient with the working with the technologies. So you can tell that, and they're also very healing at the same time. Now, some of the different things that I do with the Orgonite is incorporate different things with them. For instance, the shapes and the different stones. But I also, as an energy healer, I charge them and I heal them. I let them cure in a pyramid so that it also gets the energy that is naturally occurring inside a pyramid of a spiral. And I also pray over them or charge them with positive intention, and also include things like the solfeggio frequencies. Very often, in some of my versions, I will put a tensor ring in there that helps to amplify the Orgonite effects. If you're not familiar with tensor technology, a tensor ring is it's basically just a twisted copper wire. Now I have these. This might be a little bit difficult to see, but these coasters that I make that always have a tensor ring for you put your glass on it and it charges up whatever you're
Oh, wow.
drinking.
Okay.
Yeah, and this was a technology that came out to that seemed to happen in the 50s. People became aware that if you took a copper ring and you twisted it so that it goes in both directions, then
Uh-huh.
what actually happens is it creates a room temperature superconductor.
Oh,
And that superconductor creates a tensor field, which is really neither electric or magnetic, but it charges and brings extra energy. We also use them for healing. You can wear them for bracelets, and often I'll put them around clients, particularly if they have, an injury in a particular location or something. It really adds the energy to like heal broken bones faster and different things like that. So, um, in my new version of Orgonite, I'm going to start including one of these in every one because it magnifies the effect of the Orgonite.
wow. When you said that if you put a glass of water on there, it charges the water, it reminded me of Emoto's water experiments, right? Where
Hmm.
he would play either beautiful music or classical music or solfeggio to the water or have words like I love you. And then when he froze it and looked at the crystals under a microscope, they were beautiful and harmonious. And conversely, when he had negative energy or negative words, and then he froze that water and looked at it, the crystals were really deformed, right?
Hmm.
So it's kind of the same principle. And so,
Very much, yeah. And that reminds me, there is one way you can run tests on your different varieties of Orgonite to at least see the energies. You can take, and this is a cone that I like. I think of it as an infinite-sided pyramid. You can take this and you can put it on top of a glass of water in your freezer. And then as the water, well, you need to put a little dye in it to help you see the effects too. But as the water freezes, you can see the form of the energy forming in the ice when you take it out. So that is one way you can actually see some effects.
wow.
Yeah,
And it looks like you're wearing a pendant that's also Orgonite, right?
right. I am, and I also make these personal pendants that you wear. Probably can't see it very well, but that will protect you, and
Wow.
you can wear them on your body. So it's a good thing to have when
Wow.
you're out and about, and
Yeah.
so that you're protected all the time.
Well, before I met you and I knew you made Orgonite, I had discovered a couple down in LA who had a shop and who made it as well. And so I had gotten a pendant and I hung it's a heart, but it's Orgonite. And I hung it on the mirror in my car so that I would have it in my car. And then I bought some smaller ones, like the size of the smaller one, about that yay big. And they described that that size would cover like a certain room in your house. So I bought enough to have one in all the bedrooms, in the living area, in the like in the garage, everywhere in the house. I have Orgonite all over my house.
Yeah,
And
so do
then
I.
what I had also, what's that?
So do I. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I'd also done is I had bought, they made these things called tower busters, which, like you say, aren't that attractive. They aren't that artistic, but it still has the components, and they sold them in bulk. So I bought a bunch, and then I got a little, those little digging shovels, and I drove around the area I live to every single cell tower, which I realized they put them near schools, of course. And so I would sneak, and when no one was looking, I dig a little hole and I bury one of the tower busters near each single cell tower, because what I learned from their website is that, especially if you put it near a cell tower, because that's such a dead negative orgone energy, that it flips it, right? It
Right.
actually has a super powerful effect. And then I had some extras, so I buried them near children's playgrounds and anywhere that people congregate. And so they call this gifting, right?
Mhm.
And when I read these people's blog, they live in LA, and the whole West Coast is very dry, but deliberately so, not naturally so. And so what they described is that they made a bunch of these tower busters, and they drove from LA all the way up the West Coast to the top of Washington. And they threw them out as they were driving, or they stopped and buried them near all the cell towers. So they basically gifted the whole West Coast. This was a few years ago. And then they had images on their website and everything. And after they did that, it started to rain a lot more on the West Coast, right? And then the other thing that is I proved this myself also when I buried the stuff around the area I live. It's not that they still don't spray the chemtrails, right? But within a few hours, they go away.
Right. Right.
So that stuff really, really does work.
It really, really does. And I have I have a mini tower buster that I use. It's not pretty, but I just throw it under the car seat and have, because you've got all the electronics,
Yeah.
especially if you have one of those new battery powered vehicles.
Yeah.
You put one of these under the car seat to protect you in the car. And the tower busters are just a bigger um, uh, version of this. Um, they they surmise that about 3 ounces is between the metal and the crystals are what you need. And I make the tower busters as well. And for anybody who wants to go and bury them like you did, that is just that is
I would encourage people to do that. I mean, when I bought them, they were $10 each, but I was willing to spend $100 and get 10 of them, and just because it affects my life,
right.
and it affects the whole town. And what I know from reading a little bit of Wilhelm Reich's work is that these EMF frequencies, they're anti-life, they're brutal. And what they do actually is they suppress our human consciousness. They're used for mind control, and they destroy our physical, mental, and spiritual health and well-being. So they're deliberately negative. And we have all seen in the last few years this COVID hoax, and how many people just kind of almost robotically followed the narrative and believed something with all kinds of evidence to the contrary out there right in front of them. Well, I'm going to attribute this kind of, I don't know, mind control of humanity to this frequency fence of this electromagnetic grid that's like completely covered the whole freaking planet, right? So I'm going to venture to say that's a huge component of disease and lowering of human consciousness. Would you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely, because the EMFs are not only a low frequency, but they're backwards.
They're what?
You could say they were backwards, because
Backwards.
a lot of this effect will actually change the direction of a sine wave of the electricity coming into your house. It's
So with your experience as an energy healer, I wonder if you could describe a little bit how, because aren't we electromagnetic beings ourselves?
oh, absolutely,
So
absolutely.
how does that work energetically?
Energetically, when you're bombarded with all these EMFs, it turns your electromagnetic fields into chaos. They don't know how to withstand the normal healthy operations. It upsets them tremendously. So the effects on your health can be it's hard to measure, because there's so many different things, like the GMO foods and the pesticides and this and that. So it's very hard to quantify. But if you are at all sensitive to energies, you can sense that energy coming off of this. Or even if you're not, if you pay attention, for instance, you can meditate with the crystals and with the Orgonite, and you can feel their healing effects, their calming and soothing effects. So again, it's very hard to quantify. It's one of those things that you just try it.
Yeah, and you know, it's invisible. This EMF thing is invisible, so we don't really see it. And
Right.
so people don't really think about it much, but I've noticed since I got the Orgonite and I have it right next to my bed on my bedside table that I sleep much better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A lot of times people will put them under their bed to help sleep.
Mm.
Same with the tensor rings. You can put them under your bed to help you sleep. And they're good for all kind. You can put them out in your garden. They help the clean
Right.
energy for your plants. You can put them in the refrigerator to help your food last longer.
Okay.
Um, the
I hadn't
the
thought of that.
yeah the
But clearly these dead opposite of life force energies not going to just affect us. They're going to affect the plant world and animals and
hmm
trees and all that. So that makes a lot of sense.
right, absolutely.
And you know, it's interesting. So we mentioned Wilhelm Reich, and like you said, and he had actually notified the Air Force in the 50s of his findings, right? And he had said that he believed that negative entities or negative ETs were terraforming the earth with this energy. And, you know, predictably, his materials were confiscated. He was thrown in jail and he died in jail in 1957. And like you had mentioned earlier, he had already discovered uses for argon energy. He had been able to identify and nullify nuclear energy frequencies from that,
Right,
you know,
right.
heal cancer and all kinds of other things. So here's this very, I mean, you showed us what they look like. These things exist. It's interesting that nobody knows about it, or very few people know about it, because what if, I just want to ask you, what if every single one of us bought Orgonite, put it in our home, gifted it outside to the cell towers everywhere in the world? What do you think would happen?
I think our weather would clear up. I think our health would improve. I think we would see the weather improve, and certainly the clouds from the chemtrails. And everybody's concerned about 5G. The 5G wouldn't affect us in at all. You know, not to mention 2G, 3G, and 4G. Yeah, everybody could get one for their cell phone, one for your home, and start taking them around to cell towers. I think it would make a huge, tremendous difference.
And I mean, it's tough with this one because we've become so conditioned to our cell phones, right?
Right.
But our cell phones are this really dangerous device, not just the EMFs, but the radiation they emit, and they are mind controlled devices, you know.
hmm
And so AI is an interesting thing, but it can reciprocally influence your thinking, right?
hmm hmm
So this technology that's so useful to us is also incredibly harmful. And I mean, I don't see it as a possibility that we could all throw our cell phones out, but that would probably go a long way to our health, right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, you know, you can. I sell these little guys, they're mini tower busters, just for the cell phone, and you can just put one of these. There's a lot of different technologies, but this will do the job. And and that brings up a good point, because there's extra things we can do. Turn that Wi-Fi off at night. Just turn
Yeah.
it off, and don't have any electronics in your room while you sleep, particularly.
Right.
And just be very mindful. I have, of course, I don't really watch TV hardly at all, but put a piece of Orgonite by your TV if you're going to watch it, and
Yep.
buy microwaves, and these smart meters. Now, I don't know how aware you are of that situation, but a couple of years ago, the power company came through Raleigh and they changed out all the meters, put them in smart meters. They didn't ask nothing. They just show up in your yard and change them out. And these smart meters, the Wi-Fi from the smart meters are really really detrimental. And that's what I would just take a tensor ring and put it right over the smart meter and
Yeah.
make them for those applications. Um, you know, you can opt not to get one if you happen to catch them, and then they
Yeah.
charge you more money every month for that.
Right,
So,
right. Yeah, that's the way they do it. They want to force it on you. They do it sneakily, and if you protest, I did that. I said I didn't want it, and my bill went higher. But I was willing to do that rather than have that negative energy. And exactly what you said, I'm sort of, my family thinks I'm a little nutty, but I insist on the Wi-Fi being turned off every night. I mean, all you have to do is, flip a switch, right?
right.
And then
Hmm.
you can flip it back on in the morning, no big deal.
Right.
Why sleep and cook in that Wi-Fi, right?
Right.
And then in the house that I live in, it had already come this way. There's in most of the rooms, there's a place where you can plug in a wire. And so I can, like right now, I have a wire plugged in to my computer. I'm not using Wi-Fi. So that's another solution. You could, I'm sure, find a way to wire your whole house, and then you wouldn't need Wi-Fi at all. You just plug in, and that would go a long way.
That's
And
right.
then I'm absolutely strict about, I have 2 stories in my house, so we leave all our phones turned off downstairs. We do not bring them into the bedroom. And I know a lot of people use their phone as an alarm clock. Don't do it. Buy a cheap, you can buy a $5, $10 alarm clock and use that instead of your phone, because at least our bodies get a break when we sleep, right? And when we sleep is a time when we heal anyway. So even if we can't give up a cell phone or give up Wi-Fi or give up a computer, we can still do a lot of things to minimize that effect, right?
Absolutely.
And in that vein, I knew this guy who, I forget what the title of his job was, but he's the kind of guy who would climb up the towers and like repair things and whatnot. And he always had his cell phone in his back pocket. And he developed a huge tumor on one of his buttocks where the phone was. It was cancerous and it had to be removed, right? So I never put my phone to my head. That would be absolute, that's like putting it right next to your brain and just, radiating yourself. So I always use speakerphone. So I have it as far away from my body as I can, or I put headsets on and have the phone as far away as I can. So those are just little tips. I don't know if you have any more that you can think of to share.
No, that's great. And talking about earphones for cell phones, those Wi-Fi ear thing, you do not want those. Not at all. To put
You mean
those,
the wireless ones?
the wireless ones,
Yeah.
right, right, right,
Yeah.
right. If you have a wire, it's better.
Yep.
And like you say, the computer connection, hardwiring the Ethernet cables. A lot of
Yes.
people don't even think about that. They just automatically go to the Wi-Fi, but you also get better internet speed if you hardwire your computer. So,
Yeah. And it protects your health,
mhm.
There are little extra things that we can do, but it's a huge difference that it makes in our health and in our thinking,
Right.
in our level of consciousness. And what do we have today on the planet? We have a crisis of a lack of consciousness. People are asleep. They're almost robotic. They're plugged into the matrix and they're just receiving commands and obeying. So how do we help people wake up? Because I don't know, at least in my opinion, raising our consciousness is the single most important thing that we're going to do if we want to move forward and create a better reality, right?
Absolutely.
So if EMFs suppress consciousness so well, it's kind of an easy, practical, there's a lot of solutions here, aren't there?
There's a ton of solutions to a lot of problems just with using the Orgonite. Absolutely.
Yeah. So we could almost say Orgonite is a form of energy healing.
But yeah, I think of it as that. Sure. It's a lot of people think that energy healing is well, it's a very comprehensive term, really, that's used for a lot of different things. But I consider it part of my energy healing practice is to teach people about Orgonite, and I make it. I started out making it to be of service and to connect with my friends when we had COVID and weren't going anywhere. I found the benefit that I get too by making it is sitting in a meditative state and praying over it, because even as I wind the copper forms, the copper is a crystal as well. And as you wind it and put love into it, or peace, or just a lot of times I'll listen to the solfeggio frequencies, the 528, which heals the DNA particularly, is one of my favorites. And so it's good for me, and it's good for the people who receive it, because it's more to it than just Orgonite. I include my knowledge about geometry, and I include my prayers and set my intentions in each one.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's something that's not discussed enough. Like that old thing about praying over your food before you have dinner, right? There's
Right.
something to that. You're basically doing what you just described. You're being grateful to those food beings, those vegetables and whatever that are going to go into your body and nourish you. And, you know, I remember when I interviewed Penny Kelly in the past, she said that it's actually that the plants respond to our energy. I mean, of course they do. Everything is energy, right? And she was describing how normally what's most beneficial is that we grow our own food, because as we plant and touch it and even walk among the things we've planted, they resonate with us, and they will grow to contain the kinds of elements that our body specifically needs, right? And so she was saying, like, these big factory farm type things, like that the plants are, it's machines that do all the stuff. And so what are these plants attuning to? Machines, you know?
Yeah.
Or you import something from a completely different country where people have different nutritional needs. It's gonna develop according to their needs, not so there's so much more. I mean, Orgonite brings up to my mind just a whole paradigm of how we relate to everything matters. I mean, it so matters.
It does, and that's, you know, that's another one of my passions, is food. Not just because I like to eat, but 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 as a healer, you know, your food is your medicine, and what you eat is so important. And give it love. You know, I go out and talk to my garden every morning, and see how my plants are doing, and ask them how their night was. And of course I do that with my horses too. But yeah, it's a good way to say I love you to your plants is put some Orgonite out there, and, you know, just get a tower buster and put it in the garden. Actually, you just made me think about that. I haven't done that yet.
Yeah. What about you know, like I'm thinking when I take a shower, if I remember, I try to thank the water for cleansing me and hydrating me and restoring me. So what about putting Orgonite near where your water comes out of the faucet?
Oh, absolutely. And you can put it near there, and I like the tensor rings for that, because you can just pop it right over the faucet. I put one over the shower head, and put one over where to wash my hands, because it's round, and you know, it's just
Right.
easy, and it doesn't get in the way, doesn't get knocked over. And but also the this symbol, Celtic symbol, is a symbol for water.
Hmm.
And so I put that in this particular one. I particularly put by my water jars, and because I have water, good well water, fortunately, and also put it out in the sun to charge it up, and I also keep a crystal in it, and you can also, like Emoto says, you know, just print little labels that say I love you, or I appreciate you, and you'll really notice how different the water will taste.
Yeah.
Because all of life is conscious. It all is.
Yes.
And water is life. Oh, water is really life.
I have this idea that, okay, so for example, we are, in my opinion, embodied little bits of God here in a 3D world,
Hmm.
and we're made mostly of water. And in my observation, water is necessary for life. So I think, to me, water is the 3D manifestation of God's source.
Mm,
That's
yeah.
just my little, you know, thing. But So kind of in this discussion we're having about Orgonite and everything else, I think the theme here is consciousness, right? Like, can we become more, use more of our consciousness and imbue everything we do, the water we drink, the food we eat, everything with more life force energy, with more consciousness, with more, even I think the intent, like before you eat a piece of food, that it's going to nourish you and being grateful for it can actually transform any of that dead energy back into living energy, right?
That's actually very important, the consciousness. And I think about source all day long. Source, then talk to source, source this, source that. And quite frankly, when you really feel your oneness with source all the time, you don't need any of these devices. But in the meantime, they serve as a focal point to bring your attention to those things that you might talk to source about. So when you have a focal point that is sitting there with a certain purpose, and it really is how your consciousness is working with that focal point that makes the difference. You really hit it at the source. Yeah.
Well, this has been like just such a fascinating discussion on Orgonite. And what I love about it is there's a practical thing that we can all do, right?
Absolutely.
So I wonder if you have any last thoughts, and also if you can let people know how they might be able to buy some Orgonite. I know you make it and you have a store. I know that you can find it elsewhere as well, but
Mhm. Yeah, I have a store that's I'm revamping it right now, but I'm always available. My website is rather easy to remember. It's marshawalters.com. And if there's a place we can put links, I'll be happy to put some links. But yeah, I'll be happy to sell it. And for the Tower Busters, for people who have an intention to go out and do that great service to humanity, they're the most affordable of all.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so marshawalters.com. And
Right.
then I'm actually soon going to add a link to your store on my Unbroken website as well, under resources. So if people give it a few weeks, but you can go find us, find Marsha there as well.
Super. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been
Any last thoughts you want to leave people with on this topic of energy, of Orgonite, life force?
well, it's another gift to the creator. And it's like I say, you really don't need it, but it's helpful. And it's a helpful solution that is tangible, that is in 3D, like where our
Yep.
challenges are in 3D. And if you want to buy my Orgonite, I would appreciate it, and know that uh, I put a charge of love and gratitude and protection in each and every one that I send out.
Yeah. And on my end, before I even met you, I learned about Orgonite, and like I said, I have a piece in every room in my house, in my car. I haven't thought of putting one outside, but I will. I've gifted, they call it gifting, all the towers around me. And there has been, I moved to this area where I live 5 years ago, and since I've been here, it's rained more, according to the local people, than it ever has before. I don't tell them what I did, but I find that very interesting. And so I would just recommend, for all of our health, get some Orgonite, and at minimum, put it in your house. Put it in your car, because when you go out of your house, there's cell towers and everything. So at least if you have it in your car, you're protected. And a pendant is great. So when you go into shopping malls or things like that, I always used to feel sick when I went into big department stores or shopping malls, and I didn't really know what it was, but now I understand what it is. So if you wear a pendant, you can be physically protected no matter where you go. So I would just suggest to people, find some Orgonite and start to use it. I have noticed, and experiment with it, try it out. See if you bury stuff outside near cell towers, see if it changes your weather, you know, and see when they do chemtrail, I think people will notice that they dissipate much quicker when you put Orgonite out there. So it's a great solution. Spread the word about it, because this is one thing we can all do tangibly to protect ourselves and also to raise our collective consciousness.
Thanks. And if I could say one more thing, how much I appreciate you. I was just, I've been making Orgonite for, gosh, almost 3 years now, and I was just so tickled to hear that you actually went out and buried some in the cell towers. I don't know how many people do that, but thank you for your wisdom and your foresight and for your service to humanity. I love you.
Thank you, Marsha. I love you too. Well, on that note, hope this is helpful to everyone, and I hope we'll do some more talks on energy in the future.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for the opportunity. See you
All
soon.
right.